Amidst the roaring arena, a mysterious force begins to take form, an embodiment of nothingness defying reason and faith. Massive symbols, part cross and part shield, spin through the air as if testing the courage of all who witness them. The crowd falls silent between awe and fear, realizing that this moment will alter the course of the battle and the legacy of the great witches. Within the grand arena, Jeanne d'Arc stands with commanding grace, summoning formless magic into radiant armored vestments. Before a stunned audience, colossal symbols hover around her, defying reason and affirming her resolve. From afar, Lady Agrath watches intently, her silent gaze a reminder that this battle is not merely about strength, but about the deepest understanding of desire and destiny. Beneath a sky heavy with tension, Lady Agrath raised her hand, conjuring a glowing symbol of infinity that defied mortal comprehension. Infinity, desire without bounds, hung in the air, revealing that nothingness is not absence, but the most merciless form of longing. In the suffocating silence, the onlookers could only stare, realizing that boundless desire holds the power to bring about ruin as vast as the world itself. In the charged silence, Jeanne d'Arc steps forward, her power radiating through the trembling air. Wu Zetian watches with confident, almost mocking eyes, both acknowledging and challenging the courage of the maiden without form. Two legends of history and magic now stand opposed, their clash destined not only to decide a victor, but to test the very limits of will and destiny. Amidst an arena trembling with the crowd's roar, Wu Zetian raised her weapon with unwavering confidence, her sharp gaze appraising her opponent. Jeanne d'Arc stood firm, prepared for the monumental challenge that would decide their fates. The two legends measured each other's strength, fully aware that this clash was not merely a duel, but a battle for honor and supremacy that would echo through history. The roar of the crowd echoed through the arena as Jeanne d'Arc stood firm, a confident smile gracing her face. With steady resolve, she declared herself equal to the other legends, her magical energy pulsing powerfully around her. From afar, Wu Zetian raised her weapon, gauging her opponent's strength, fully aware that this clash was still not enough to measure the resolve of a true warrior. With fiery determination in her eyes, Jeanne d'Arc challenged her opponent, a confident smile gracing her lips as she demanded answers about true desire. The arena trembled with tension as sword and magic prepared to clash, while Wu Zetian measured her next move. Wu Zetian unleashed a devastating strike, transforming the arena into a swirling storm of dust and wind, a near-impenetrable wall encircling Jeanne d'Arc. The spinning debris narrowed her vision, turning every movement into a risk. The crowd's cheers faded into stunned whispers, realizing that this unleashed force was not merely physical power. It was a trial of resolve and endurance on the edge of chaos. Wu Zetian burst through the raging storm with lightning speed, appearing right beside Jeanne d'Arc to launch a sudden vicious strike. Their blades clashed, sending sparks of power rippling through the air. The swirling dust and wind grew wilder, shrouding the arena in chaos, leaving only flashes of light and the sound of clashing steel as the audience held their breath at the ferocity of the battle. Wu Zetian unleashed a flurry of powerful, relentless strikes, attacking from every angle and forcing Jeanne d'Arc to hold her ground amidst a storm of unending blows. Wind and dust swirled around them, making every movement unpredictable. The audience watched in stunned awe, realizing that a single misstep could change the course of everything. Wu Zetian harnessed the power of wind to amplify her speed, striking Jeanne d'Arc with an ever-escalating fury. Each gust carried a new assault, while the storm of dust enveloped them, transforming the arena into a merciless battlefield. The tension peaked, and even defense itself seemed destined to crumble beneath the relentless surge of her growing power. Wu Zetian's strike landed with explosive force, sending shockwaves of dust and energy rippling across the arena. Each swing carried power enough to shatter any defense, forcing Jeanne d'Arc to match her with incredible speed and precision. Amid the swirling winds and flashing sparks, the two legends tested the very limits of their strength, leaving the audience frozen in breathless suspense. With lightning-fast reflexes, Jeanne d'Arc angled her shield just in time, deflecting Wu Zetian's deadly strike and shifting the battle's momentum. Dust and wind swirled around them as the energy from the clash burst outward. Without hesitation, she seized the opening, unleashing a swift and precise counterattack. Blow after blow echoed through the arena as Wu Zetian and Jeanne d'Arc faced each other in a fierce duel. Wu Zetian pressed with full force, but Jeanne stood her ground, her eyes blazing with unwavering determination. Amidst the clash of steel and magic, Jeanne realized that speed and strength alone were not what she sought. What she desired was something deeper, a true meaning behind every battle. Amidst the swirling winds and flashing weapons, Jeanne d'Arc fixed her sharp gaze on Wu Zetian, her voice filled with resolve as she demanded a fiercer battle. Wu Zetian's confident smile answered the challenge without hesitation. The two legends surged back into the fray, their powers rising while the air around them trembled, signaling that this duel had only just entered an even more ferocious stage. The sound of heavy breaths and echoing steps filled the arena as Wu Zetian gathered all her strength. The air trembled and her eyes burned with relentless determination. With a commanding motion, she compressed her energy, preparing a strike that could shift the course of the battle. Wu Zetian gazed at Jeanne d'Arc with a confident smile, the wind swirling softly around her majestic spear. With graceful poise, she fully accepted the challenge, ready to take this battle to greater heights. The faint cheers of the crowd mingled with the whispering wind, wrapping the arena in a beautiful tension as the two legends prepared to continue their epic duel. Wu Zetian charged forward with full force, her spear striking with deadly precision, driving Jeanne d'Arc to defend against the relentless onslaught. Shards of energy and dust burst outward, flashing with every impact. The audience held its breath as Jeanne nearly faltered, yet her eyes still burned with unyielding resolve, refusing to bow before such a formidable foe. The arena fell silent as the swirling winds ceased, leaving Jeanne d'Arc standing alone in the battlefield's center. The crowd and observing witches stared in confusion, unable to spot Wu Zetian anywhere. Tension thickened in the air, every gaze searching for a sign. Wu Zetian emerged from above, harnessing the wind to soar with lethal grace before diving down with tremendous force. The massive vortex she conjured spun violently, crashing toward Jeanne d'Arc in a strike that pushed the limits of her skill. A colossal vortex unfurled, and from within the storm, the silhouettes of mighty dragons emerged, gleaming like sovereigns of the heavens descending to earth. Jeanne d'Arc stood firm amidst the chaos, winds spiraling around her with nearly unbearable force. The crowd's cheers fell silent, awestruck and terrified by this divine spectacle, a strike that felt like the wrath of the gods themselves. Jeanne d'Arc harnessed Wu Zetian's swirling winds to propel herself skyward, her eyes gleaming with determination as she locked onto her opponent. The arena stood frozen in anticipation, the crowd awestruck by her bravery and cunning. Amidst the roaring storm and turbulent magic, the next clash between these two legends would decide who truly reigned supreme on the battlefield. Amidst the raging vortex, Jeanne d'Arc locked her gaze on Wu Zetian, her determination unshaken. The two mighty forces surged toward each other, ready for an uncompromising clash. The winds howled as if bearing witness to their sworn battle. Wu Zetian dove sharply through the raging storm, her challenge cutting through the air as wild winds consumed the arena. Jeanne d'Arc stood unwavering, her magical shield gleaming as she prepared to take the attack head-on without retreat. The spectators held their breath, realizing this moment was a clash of wills that would test both fighters to their absolute limits. Amid the endless swirling storm, Jeanne d'Arc's inner voice echoed, demanding more power, more challenge. The winds whipping around her carried an almost unbearable tension, while her eyes burned with fierce determination. This moment was no longer just a battle. It was desire itself made manifest, a longing to transcend every limit. With explosive force, the clash between Wu Zetian and Jeanne d'Arc shattered the air, fragments of energy and magical shields scattering around them. Wu Zetian struck with the ferocity of a dragon, yet Jeanne held her ground, her eyes burning with an unquenchable desire. Amid the swirling storm, a single inner voice echoed, a demand for greater power, greater challenge, a longing without end.